In this video, we'll be looking at how to use the loop statements in C# to get more efficiency out of our code. I have created a project called Week 5 Exercise 1. Here's the description of the challenge. We are going to get input for 5 students and calculate their average. We have done this before, but we are going to write it using loops at this point. So when I say loops, it is basically like how we repeat a set of statements based upon if a condition is true or false. You would do it that many times. So in this particular example, we are going to be looking at loops called the loop called the while loop, and we are going to be using a counter to count how many times a particular statement has been executed. So let's think about it. As a human being, if you need the scores of 5 students, you would say, give me the scores of 5 students. One by one only you are getting input. So when they give you the first student input, that would be counting as 1. Second student, if they give their input, that will be number 2, so on and so forth. So as soon as you reach 5, you know that you don't need inputs anymore and that you're done. So that is typically what we are doing here. Instead of counting in our head, we are using a counter variable. Also in this video, we'll be looking at how to use double, how to convert string to double. So let's declare our variables. Our score will be a double, sum will be a double, and then average will be double too. So we have the 3 variables. So the steps that we need, we need to read the input, save it to a string variable, the next step will be to convert. So that's the method we are using to convert. So if you hover over, you can see this particular function takes string value as input, string as input, double as output. The next step is to add the score to sum. So if we were to not use loops, we would just repeat this over and over for 4 more students. These 3 statements would repeat, which means anything that repeats has to be inside a loop. So there is a loop called while. So this is the format for it. While this condition is true, do this, whatever is in this. So what do we want to do? These 3 lines. So we put that inside the while. So while a condition is true, so the condition would be a count. So we want to count. So we want to use a counter. So the counter is going to be called as counter. So we initialize the value of the counter to 0. So every time these 3 statements are executed, the counter is going to go up 1. Every time these 3 are executed, the counter will go up 1. So the first time you get it's 1, second time 2, third time 3, fourth time 4, fifth time 5. If it reaches 5, you should not repeat again. So until it reaches 5, we will repeat this loop. So when I say until it reaches 5, that means it is less than 5. While counter is less than 5, do all these 3 statements. Okay, so let's not even do this here. Let's move the declaration here. String score as text. Okay. So this is a counter variable. So at the end of this loop, counter will be 5 and sum will be the sum of the 5 scores. Now let's calculate the average. Now let's display the values. Console.writeLine. So this is string interpolation, so you give the variable at the very end. So it will be sum and average. So this has shrunk our code to just 4 lines within the loop that repeat and one that does not repeat. Average has to be calculated at the end. That is only done once, so it does not repeat. Let's run this program. So you can see the build is successful. Now let's run the program. So this is where you have to do the boundary condition testing. Like you have to make sure that it doesn't accept more than 5 inputs. So that's my first line. That's that line 20. So it's asking for input. So let me give you 56. That's first number, second number, third number, fourth number, fifth number. It should not ask me for any more. There you go. It didn't ask me. So there are 5 numbers. All the 5 are added and then the average is calculated. So let's run the program one more time, this time giving more decimal values. I just gave whole numbers. Let's do decimal values now. Okay, 67.5, 34.5. Five numbers, it calculated the score, and then the averages also calculated. So the important thing is that I gave decimal numbers and then the decimal areas are retained and not truncated. When I mean truncate, it just drops those values. So especially like, in situations where the calculations have to be accurate, you don't want that to happen. That's why, depending upon the type of input, you have to declare your variables to be able to hold those values. So those are my calculations right now. So if you want to step through, you can put a breakpoint here inside the loop. And then outside the loop, if you want to see how the loops work. So you have to remember the loop here is controlled by the counter. The counter keeps tab of how many uh, of these scores we are entering. So this is completely driven by the counter. Only these 4 lines are repeating. The average does not repeat. I will push this code to GitHub and you can take a look at it from my repository. See you in the next video.